Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to probably be a longer forecast video. We have a lot of things to discuss, particularly about tomorrow evening, tomorrow night. But let's just hop into it. So, first things first, that first little shortwave trough disturbance is overhead and moving and working its way out. That's why it's raining a fair bit and will probably continue raining for at least a couple hours still. Now, we are not really going to catch a break once this thing moves out. Yes, we will have periods over the next, day or two where it's not raining. It's not going to be constantly raining like it's, October or something, but there will be rain. There will be periods of rain, some periods of pretty heavy rain, and some periods of not rain. But we can really thank the fact that we're not going to get a break. Um, we can really attribute that to this big chunky trough here. Now, what this big chunky trough here is going to do is, well, first of all, going back to today, this evening, it's going to kick off a bunch of severe weather, especially with that little tiny short wave right there on the Oklahoma-Texas border. It's going to kick off a bunch of severe weather down there, particularly in the form of large hail, but also potentially some damaging wind and tornadoes. Now, as we go through tomorrow, and into tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening, this thing's really going to expand and it's going to do the same thing farther east. Hail, damaging wind, and tornadoes. But because it's also that jet is really expanding and it's also on the right side and starting to bring this trough back upwards, and that jet is also really expanding outward, that could include us too. Emphasis on could, but there is certainly a possibility that some of that severe weather leaks into our area. That is something we are going to have to discuss. Now, eventually, this trough will move on out and be out of our hair. But it looks like as we head into Saturday morning, we could still very well be dealing with some of the implications of this, especially as we transition from the right exit region to the right entrance region of this jet, which perhaps leads to more rising motion. So, a lot of precipitation in the forecast for sure. Now, as usual, we're going to step down to the 700 and then eventually the 850 millibar chart just to get closer and closer to the surface, just to make sure we're not missing anything. And it does look like that there's this little nub right here on the Oklahoma-Texas border that is going to help kickstart some of the severe weather down there tonight. And that is just going to keep riding northeastward through pretty much the entire day or overnight period. You don't see it as well, but it is still there as we head into tomorrow evening. So that could potentially kick off some of the weather for us tomorrow afternoon. Although it does look like perhaps it comes through a little bit early, so who knows. It was a very subtle little guy, but it was there nonetheless. And then as this jet really starts to move into the area, maybe we get more precipitation as we head into the early morning hours on Saturday. But it really tells a very similar story as the 500 millibar chart. And I'm sure the 850 millibar chart here is going to tell a similar story as well. So we're just going to kind of zoom through this. Yeah, it really doesn't look that different. You can actually kind of see that little shortwave a bit more clearly coming in, again, kind of fairly early in the afternoon, or at least compared to when you typically expect severe weather. And then we get that low-level jet starting to move in as we head into the late evening overnight hours, so that could be fun. That could be fun. But yep, much of the same story. So now let's head down to the surface, and there are some positives here. It's not just going to be, oh no, rain, potentially severe weather. Like, no, there's a reason for this. Um, you know, we can't have nice things in March unless there's a caveat to it, and this is perfect example of that because this low pressure system here that is developing as a result of that upper level trough is going to start moving northeastward towards our area, and it is going to be bringing up some nice warm air into our area. So the weather's going to be quite nice. And that's why we're looking at potential severe weather, because it's going to be warm and it's going to be more humid. So lovely. So let's zoom in a bit here and take a look at our highs and lows. So currently temperatures are just above 40 degrees, and they will kind of hang around there for the next few hours and decrease ever so slightly as we head into the evening to just below 40 degrees. But they will kind of remain stable there through the rest of the overnight and into tomorrow morning. And then as we start to head into mid morning, those temperatures will once again begin to increase. And by noon, we will already be warmer than at any point today. We will be in the mid 40s, and by early afternoon, we'll be up into the 50s. And it is certainly possible that by evening, we are in the mid to upper 50s, getting close to 60. So, yeah, pretty warm. And then that warm air will continue to move upwards. So, as we move ahead, by 7 a.m. tomorrow, more than likely going, or not tomorrow, by 7 a.m. Saturday, more than likely going to be above 60 degrees, which will feel very nice, but it will bring its consequences. Now, unfortunately, there is a cold front right behind this, but the good news is that cold is not expected to last. Now we're going to take a look at precipitation, and we're first going to take a look at the more broad, smoothed out ensemble averaged precipitation, so a lot of details will be lost, but it should give us a pretty decent idea of when there's precipitation, how long, etc. And so you see we have this current area of rain moving through, and that'll hang around for a few more hours before moving out. Then most of the overnight should be pretty calm, pretty nice and easy. And then as we head towards tomorrow evening, we kind of have a larger mass of rain moving in. Or tomorrow afternoon, I should say. It's not evening yet. And then towards evening, some more rain coming in. Then maybe we have some break overnight, and then we have more coming in the morning. So the rain tomorrow afternoon, evening, and into Saturday morning will be off and on. There will certainly be dry periods, and there will certainly be wet periods. But now let's take a look at our member viewer. This gives us a more detailed high resolution of what each individual member model is showing. And let's just jump past today because that's a little more set in stone. And first thing is that we kind of have this first little nub that moves through in the early afternoon, likely associated with that shortwave that we were mentioning earlier. But then right around evening time, some thunderstorms kind of pop up near our area and move through, and potentially even some more after that. And then as we head into Saturday morning, oh, look at that, more thunderstorms. Or at least, at the very least, heavy rain. There's no guarantee that these will be thunderstorms, but they certainly look like some. Now, that's just one member model. Let's take a look at another. Kind of has, doesn't really show as much, at least tomorrow evening. Does show still something kind of late evening to our north, but it does pick up on that second round in the morning on Saturday. This one does show some stuff in the evening, just before 7 p.m. This is not quite over Lansing, but it's still pretty close, so close enough to potentially keep an eye on. And then it also picks up on that second round in the morning. Now this one doesn't, oh, actually, right here, evening 7 p.m., it does pick up on a storm or two right here, right near us, maybe not quite on us, but again, close. So it's something to monitor. And then it's not as bold on the morning round, but it does still show some storms, but maybe a bit less coverage down towards our area. And then finally, this model does show some of that precipitation, that first little node moving through tomorrow afternoon, and then nothing in the evening. And then it's really not showing too much of that second round in the morning, but there's stuff there. So general idea here is that we are probably going to get some sort of precipitation Saturday morning. Light, moderate, maybe some heavy. And then there's a solid chance that there is a thunderstorm near the Lansing area tomorrow evening. And that is what I'm interested in. I think the probability of that is fairly low, but I think if those storms develop and move towards our area, and that's a big if, those storms will have the highest chance of producing severe weather. I think that the storms that move through Saturday morning could potentially have some severe characteristics as well, but I think if we end up with these evening storms tomorrow evening, those would have the highest chance to bring some severe weather. Now we are actually going to take a closer look at one of the member models here. This is the HRRR. Do keep in mind that this is just one model run of one particular model, so do not take this word for word, but I'm going to get a little technical here. I want to highlight the environment that this is showing, just to give you an idea of why I think that if these afternoon storms occur, that they have the highest chance of bringing severe weather. So again, this will get a bit technical. We're going to start with this chart on the left here that shows the temperature and the dew point, as well as the wind profile on the side. And this white dashed line indicates the path let's say a little bubble of air would take as it's rising. And the area between this and the red line is what we call CAPE, or basically energy for upward motion or storms. Now, admittedly, this is not a lot of CAPE at all. It's a very thin, small profile. However, if we take a look at this chart over here, this is called a hodograph on the right. This gives us an idea of the wind shear, or the change in wind speed and direction with height that we have. And this is a really good looking hodograph for severe weather. You like this red here is in the lowest levels of the atmosphere, and you like to see a really nice curve like this with that. And again, we have that. So that is definitely tells me that these storms could be organized storms. And then if we take a trip down here, we can see the storm relative helicity, or the SRH values, are 400, 500, even around 250 at worst case when you take into the layer that this storm will actually be existing in. And you'll notice that this white part, little dotted line on this chart here, doesn't start quite at the surface. And that is because of this little warm nose here, which means that any air that the storm will be taking in will likely be a little bit higher based, which would mean two things. The first thing it would mean was that this would likely be a bit more of a hail producer. It would be a bit more efficient at producing hail rather than other severe hazards. However, sometimes higher values of shear, or storm relative helicity, can help a storm locally lower this down to the surface. And when that happens, then you start to increase your tornado risk. And although, again, this is not a particularly favorable or a particularly impressive environment in case the possible hazard type here even just says marginal severe, I do think that this would carry if that storm relative helicity is enough to overcome that little warm nose, and if these storms even occur in the first place. So there's a lot of ifs going on here. But I think that if all of those things occur, there is a non-zero chance that we could be bringing tornadoes into the discussion. So my thoughts on here is that these storms have the highest chance to be severe, and there is a non-zero but low tornado threat, and I think the main threat we would have to worry about, and I still think this threat is low. It's not very high, but I think the main threat we would have to worry about is hail. Now, as we move on to the next round, let's take a look at these soundings, perhaps. I just took a look off camera there. It wasn't very impressive, but it still tells me that if there is any severe threat with this morning round, it would more than likely be in the form of hail, if anything at all. So, now one thing to keep in mind is that this model has temperatures right around 60 degrees at the time of those evening storms. And so, if temperature ends up being a little less warm, if we end up a little bit colder than expected, that could really thwart the severe weather threat in the evening. Or if they end up as or even a little bit warmer than expected here, then that could help to enhance that severe weather. Now let's just take a look at another model really quick. This is the NAM. This is probably the least aggressive model when it comes to our evening storms. It actually has that little node moving through early on and then nothing at all for the evening storms. And part of that is owed to the fact that it has much cooler temperatures, a good 6 to 8 degrees colder at the same time frame. So that is very easily one of the quote unquote fail modes there. Now it does have those 60s coming in eventually, just not at the time that we would really be interested in. Now, if we take, let's just say maybe the FV3 here, this is a different model. Now, this one is kind of on the same page as the other one. It brings those temperatures up into the 60s. And let me just click see what kind of environment it's modeling here. Modeling similar shear, although it does still have a much thinner cape profile that really not overly impressive. I mean, you would struggle to get a severe storm in here, but the point is that I'm making is that while the severe weather is not likely in any sense of the means, it is possible. So don't have your guard down just because it's March and it's not super warm. Again, I think overall the severe threat is quite low, but it's there, and I do want to make that known. And of course, I'm not the only one seeing this. This is the official day 2 outlook from the Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. And here in the Lansing area, we are in a level 1 out of 5 marginal risk. So as I was mentioning earlier, the risk is low, but it is there. And I just really want to bring that up because I know a lot of people in Michigan are probably not going to be thinking about severe thunderstorms in March, even when it's warm. And they do have the tornado threat a little bit displaced to the north from us, but we are close enough that, again, I think we do need to worry about that. Or maybe not worry. Worry is the wrong word, but it should be in our minds. The wind is similar story, but as I was mentioning earlier, they have bumped the hail threat a little bit into our area. And again, this is only a 5%, which means there is a 5% chance of severe hail occurring within 25 miles of any given point in this brown area. Now, of course, the yellow and the red areas that we see are higher probabilities, but those are far from us. Now, the little black outlines is for significant severe weather. For hail, that would be, this is SIG level 1, so that would be 2 inches to 3.5 inches. For wind, a little bit lower of a threat, and again, we're hardly near the 5%, and we're not in any SIG area here, but in this higher area to our southwest, that would be 15% chance with SIG 1, which would be just above hurricane force. And those are like the reasonable worst case intensity. So that's not like what's being like full on expected everywhere. That's just the reasonable worst case intensity. And same with tornadoes. This black outline gives the indication that there is, the reasonable worst case intensity would be around an EF2 on the scale, on the tornado scale, which goes from 0 to 5. And you do see that some of that bleeds into Michigan a bit. So while the threat for a tornado here in Michigan is low, it does exist. And as you get closer to, say, the Grand Rapids area, there is even a chance that if a tornado occurs, it could reasonably potentially get up to EF2 intensity. Also, going back to this morning round of storms, I have realized that I made it seem like that this round, again, is not going to be super impressive, which it won't be. But I just want to say that if it becomes more linear, just like this, it is certainly possible that that is why you actually see this 2% tornado risk extending into Michigan far to our northeast as well. Let me get back here. Because sometimes you can have little embedded circulations in these lines like this that result in short-lived tornadoes that you wouldn't really have much of a warning for. So, while I do think that if that evening round occurs, it would have the highest threat, I do think that this morning round could pose a threat for some hail and potentially a tornado or two as well. Again, but it's just that threat is low. So yeah, obviously don't panic, don't expect it. I'm not saying there's going to be hail or tornadoes. I'm just bringing it up that it is a possibility. A low possibility, but a possibility nonetheless. But finally, let's move on from that and just talk about wind. And when I say that, I'm talking about the regular, sustained environmental wind not relating to any storms. So it is possible that there are some locally higher winds that are found in storms, but that's not the kind of winds that we're going to be talking about here. So for the most part, today and this evening is calm. Tomorrow morning is calm, but some winds do still start to build in late tomorrow afternoon and into tomorrow evening. We're looking at sustained winds, maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour. And then as we head into Saturday morning, we could see sustained winds push up to 20 miles per hour at times. Now, if you look at our wind gusts, relatively calm around now. Some gusts 10 to 15 miles per hour at most. That should remain to be the case for much of the period. Again, until we start to head into tomorrow, late tomorrow afternoon and into the evening. Some of those stronger gusts could start to get up to 30 miles per hour, perhaps even 35 miles per hour. And then as we head into Saturday morning, it could certainly get rather gusty. Some of those stronger gusts could be pushing 40 to 50 miles per hour. So that is something to keep in mind. Last but not least, we're going to go over cloud cover. Of course, right now it's cloudy, and it should remain cloudy through the evening, through the overnight, through tomorrow evening. Though it is possible that maybe we get a brief moment of clearing, at some point in the early evening when it's, if we, don't get those evening storms, or if we happen to be between them, then it's possible that you get maybe like a tiny, tiny bit of clearing, but don't count on it. And then cloudy for beginning part of tomorrow evening, and then there may be a brief moment overnight where cloud cover drops a little bit, and we could have 20 to 30% clearing. Still not a ton, still mostly clouds. But then again, as we head into Saturday morning, those clouds will be pretty much full coverage once again as that next round comes in. With that, that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow with a update on that severe weather potential.